Well. Yep, Kaisa is getting buff in 40.8. I was not expecting this at all, because in my opinion, right now, Kaisa is in a pretty good spot. She has a good win rate in solo queue and good presence in pro play. But I guess right at other plans. Now, if you're wondering why so many champions are getting buffed, this is because it's a pro play patch. If you're a bit confused on what this means, let me explain. Normally when Riot does patches, they look at solo queue data and pro play data, and based on that they take decisions. But for two patches in a season, one before MSI and one before Worlds, since they are the patches that pro players will play during these competitions, Riot kinda forgets about solo queue and only looks at pro play. This is why, even if Driven has a 51% win rate in solo queue right now, he's still getting a buff, because he's simply not picked enough in pro play. But what's a bit confusing is that Kaisa is picked in pro play right now. Last patch she had a 22% pick rate, and the patch before that she had a 10% presence. So yeah, I guess Riot really wants Kaisa to be meta at MSI. And by the way, if you enjoyed the video and want to keep up with any Kaisa news, just make sure to subscribe. Alright, let's start. So the buff we are getting is a Q80 ratio buff of 5% from 50 to 55. By the way, what's pretty funny here is that this wasn't the first buff we got on PBE. This was the actual OG buff we got when it was announced on PBE a couple hours ago. As you can see, Kaisa had two buffs, the Q80 ratio and the armor buff from 25 to 27, so 2 armor. By the way, just to clear some confusion, all of this means the same thing. These two values are just calculations from the damage increase because of the 580 buff. So yeah, there are only two buffs, the armor buff and the Q80. But once again, after people reacted a lot to the post, Riot got scared again and reverted the armor buff. Honestly, they really need to stop teasing us with these HP and armor buff, man. Now you might see this and be like, well, it's just a 5% AD buff, not that big. But remember something, every build gets Q evolution first, from AP Kaisa to hybrid. This is a global buff to every aspect of the champion, so yeah, it's way bigger than you think. And now I did test the buff on PBE already, so overall I look at Eclipse Longsword, Static Pickaxe, Kraken BF Sword, Static Noon Quiver, and Maimune Q evolution. And overall, the buff is giving around 20 to 35 more damage when you fully land a Q on someone, which represent a 3 damage buff in Q damage. Even at 3 elements, it's still gonna be a 3% damage increase around that. Now again, you might say, oh well, it's just 3%, not that much. But again, remember, Kaisa Q has a 6-second cooldown. It's so easy to spam, and yes, even though you might not feel it when you press Q, over time in lane, every time you land Q on someone, this will do more damage, and over time, this buff will have a lot of impact in your game. Not to mention, it will also help you farm minions with more ease. Apart from the damage, the biggest winner of this buff is by far Eclipse, since compared to Static and Kraken, Eclipse has the cheapest Q evolution. In my opinion, for bot lane Kaisa, if you get fed and you want to build hybrid, I really recommend to build Eclipse Kraken, because it just does way more damage now, and you get the Q evolution level. You get early Q evolution, it does way more damage, and you can abuse the buff even more. And yes, over Static. Now, I still need to test it between Kraken and Eclipse for AD Kaisa, but it's clear that Eclipse has gained a lot of value this patch. Now for mid and top lane, I recommend watching my video I posted yesterday about Eclipse Ludens Kaisa, because it just got a massive buff with this. You will do so much more damage into matchups like Talon and Teemo. But yes, overall, this is a pretty good early game damage buff and gives you more comfort with minions. Now, is this gonna make Kaisa OP? Well, I don't think so. Now for sure her pick rate will go up, for sure. She's sitting right now at 70% pick rate, so I expect her pick rate to go up around 30% in 14.8. So yeah, if you're a Kaisa OTP, I recommend highly to first pick the champion if you want to play her. Apart from that, I don't think her win rate will go up by that much. Because here's the thing, although it's a strong buff, it doesn't really break the champion like it was when Static was added or Collector was added back in Season 13 and Season 11. Even with Eclipse, it won't break the game like Collector did. Kaisa win rate right now is sitting around 49%, so I expect that to climb by maybe 0.5 points or by at best 1 point. So around 50 to 51%. Even if more people abuse Eclipse, it should still be fine. Now the second question is she gonna be picked banned at MSI? Again, I don't think so. Because here's the thing, there are still many champions that can counter Kaisa, like Varus, Draven, Senna, Aphelios, Janna, Jhin for example. So yes, I don't think you can really blind pick Kaisa without a lot of CC. Even if your composition has a lot of CC, it's probably better to pick her as a comfort or a counter. So although I do think she will be picked more, I don't think she will be picked in ban at 80% presence. But again, with pro play, it's always hard to tell how pro players react to balance changes. But yes, that was pretty much all I wanted to say about the buff. I'm pretty happy, I'm not complaining at all. getting more damage, I'll take it. Now, in other news, there are other champions that are getting buffs, so let's look at that. Draven, like Kaisa, is getting a nice early game buff in his Q, so his axes autos are up by 5 base damage. Now, this is a pretty scary buff, since it kills a natural counter for a while now, and now it does even more damage in lane. I think in 40.8, if you're a casual player and you like playing Kaisa, ban Draven. I think next patch, the two only champions you should be banning is or Nida or Draven. Since the rest, even though they can be annoying like Ashe, they are possible to play into. Nida and Draven on the other hand will just be massive pain to play into. The second ADC getting a nice buff is Jhin. Great, another difficult matchup for Kaisa. Jhin is getting more movement speed and more Q-AD ratio. The reason why Jhin is hard for Kaisa is because he's so fast. Even if you try to trade with him, it's so easy for him to land more damage and CC you while you still struggle to land autos. So this buff, although not as big as the Draven one, will for sure make him even more a pain to deal with in lane. So overall, even though Kaisa is getting a nice buff, two of Kaisa's hardest matchups are also getting buffed. So again, I don't think the champion will become OP. A bit more stronger, for sure, but that's it. Oh, and last champ I want to talk about is Kaisa. Because yes, next patch you won't be able to use QSS for his ultimate anymore. So yeah, to all ADC main out there, enjoy 14.8. It's gonna be a wild ride for sure, but at least on the good side they did revert the Yone buff and the Vega buff, so at least that. Alright, with that said everyone, I hope you enjoyed and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.